All right, you guys, I have chosen a perfect, gloomy autumn morning to share with you the books I am planning on, hoping to read in the month of October. So, the first part of my October possibilities planning process is to include Victober. So, Victober is a month-long readathon where you choose a work that is from the Victorian era, which is between, I think, 1837 and 1901. It is the duration of Queen Victoria's reign in England, and it revolves around British literature specifically. So Victober is celebrating its 10th anniversary, and the original creators have invited other people to join the celebration this year, and there are 10 co-hosts. And so in honor of that, there are 10 challenges that we Victober lovers get to try to meet. And they actually created this really cute Victo bingo. We have the challenges that are here on the left of each of the 10 creators. And then down here you have the goals. If you get 1 to 3 challenges completed, you're Mr. Macabre level. If you get 4 to 6 challenges, you're Jane Eyre level. If you're 7 to 9, you're Sherlock Holmes level. And if you get 10 prompts done, then you are at the Dracula level. So I just love how they have, even within that game of the bingo, we are sticking within that Victorian theme of games to kind of bring a little bit more fun into what's already a fun month-long challenge. So I have used this challenge column over here just to help guide some of my choices. I actually have books that I already wanted to read, and so then it's just kind of being creative about figuring out how they fit into this category. So we will just dive right in to my first selection for Victober, and that is A Tale of Two Cities.
So A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens meets Jess's challenge, which is step back in time, read a Victorian work set in a different era. This is set in the backdrop of the French Revolutionary War. So I read A Tale of Two Cities years ago. In this, we have a barrister, like a legal representative. And we kind of meet him along a dark road at the very beginning, and he gets a message. And he, through this message and through his travels, has discovered that a man who has been imprisoned for years is now out. And this barrister, this financial representative, knows the man's daughter. And so he goes to his daughter and says, I think I've found your father. And so he and the daughter travel to meet this man who was imprisoned and is now out. So as we can expect with any Charles Dickens novel, there is a lot of political analysis and sort of this overarching critique of the social structure, again, under that backdrop of the French Revolutionary War. So I'm excited to reread this. I'm also, I think, going to listen to it. I found a dramatized version on Audible, so I will pair this with the audio version. Okay, so next I have Emily Eden's The Semi-Attached Couple. This was the book choice for the Cozy Reader Book Club. We chose this around last year at this time, but this happens to meet Elizabeth's challenge of reading a work by an underrated Victorian woman writer, so not the Bronte sisters, not Elizabeth Gaskell or George Eliot. This is actually has 2 different books written by Emily Eden in it. The first one is The Semi-Detached House. She actually wrote and published that first under a pseudonym, and when that reached some acclaim, she felt comfortable reaching for her The Semi-Attached Couple, which she had actually written 30 years prior. So in this, we follow a newly married couple, Lady Helen Eskdale and Lord Teviot. Lord Teviot seems to be a little bit jealous of Lady Eskdale's close relationships with her family, and she is very put off by his jealousy. And so they end up being surrounded by a lot of other married couples, some happily, some not. And so we get this magnified view of marriage through examples of good and not so good marriages. And through this, we watch the fate of their marriage as they separate. And then we are hopeful, I think, that they end up back together. My understanding is that Emily Eden writes in a similar satirical nature as Jane Austen. A lot of people compare her works to that of Jane Austen as far as language choices and, again, the viewpoint on marriage. So we will see. I am excited to read this for the Cozy Reader Book Club. I'm excited to read a new to me Victorian female author. So that is very exciting. So next, I want to share about the group read for Victober. They had a Discord poll, and while Villette by Charlotte Bronte was looking like it might be in the lead, Hester by Mary Oliphant won. I think that this book will fit for a few different of the challenges. So that is something with this Victo Bingo, is that you can have one book that fits in multiple categories. And that, I think, is the way that I am going to proceed. So in Hester, we actually have two, I think, main female characters. The first is Catherine Vernon. She is a widow who seems to have taken on her husband's banking business, and she is a very prodigious business owner. And she has a nephew, I believe, that she is very attached to, and she's trying to invest in him and get him to kind of be the one that she can pass off their business to. Well, in comes Hester and her mother, and apparently Hester is a very strong-willed child, and she and Catherine butt heads. This, I think, is an example of a Victorian novel where we have strong women who are entangled with weak men. But ultimately, we are looking at the relationship between Hester and Catherine. Despite the title, the novel has two heroines, Hester and her elderly second cousin Catherine, who seems at first to be the spider sitting in the center of the web in which the girl is caught. The book's real romance, although Hester has a succession of suitors, is between these two women, a version of Pride and Prejudice in which misunderstanding, resentment, and jealous independence mask similarity and attraction. Quote, "I think you and I have hated each other because we were meant to love each other, child." So I just think that sounds so beautiful, and I think that this might also fit for Kate's challenge of read a Victorian book where friendship is featured. And Catherine has a challenge of read a Victorian book that has a connection to Jane Austen. And Mary Oliphant actually has written critiques on Jane Austen's work, and so there is a connection there.
Another book that will fit for a couple different challenges, and that is Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. This is a poem, and so this fits for Katie's challenge of read a work of Victorian literature that is not a novel, such as a play or a short story or a poem. This also fits Roy's challenge. I was unfamiliar with Roy's channel before this Victober, and he shares so many fantastic fantasy Victorian novels with these beautiful old paperback copies. I love the pairing of classics with fantasy. So his is to read a Victorian work in the fantasy genre, and Goblin Market will fit in that because we've got two sisters, Laura and Lizzie, who are tempted by goblin men. I think this is a moral allegory. I think there are sexual implications in this. I have never read this, and I'm excited to have such a beautifully illustrated copy. I also, before coming up here, I worked on trying to find a solution to Milena's challenge, which is spin a color wheel and pick a Victorian book with a cover that primarily features that color. And so when I spun it, it came up white. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I can use that for Goblin Market. I had all my books kind of set out with the hopes that I was going to find one that would fit with that color wheel prompt, and this one does. So I still have Marissa's challenge, which is read a work of Victorian literature where a character experiences a change in class status, social mobility, fallen women, etc. So I had the pleasure of being asked by a couple friends of mine that I have done buddy reads with before to read Jezebel's Daughter by Wilkie Collins. I found it on my Kindle. There also is an audiobook version that I might actually pair together. I love Wilkie Collins. My understanding from reading about this, the plot of this book, that it will fit with Marissa's challenge. So I'm super excited to be reading another Wilkie Collins. I may have to just say every Victober I read a Wilkie Collins because at this point it seems to be what's happening. So with Victo Bingo, if you get all 10 prompts, you are at the Dracula level, which I am here for. My goal is to be at Dracula level. The only challenge that I don't yet have is Ross's challenge, which is empire spotting. See how many times you can spot signs of the empire in your Victober reading. I think I will be able to spot anything that alludes to the empire in a lot of these books. So I will keep my eye out for that in order to reach Ross's challenge. And then the other one is Hannah's challenge, read a Victorian work that discusses education. So Hannah is also someone new to me. I watched her video on works of education because I really wasn't finding a lot. And she offered so many options. So if I can't really find anything else, I will go back to that list. One thing that she mentioned was a Sherlock Holmes option. So I might do that if I'm in a pickle and wanting to reach that goal. So we will see. Because I am reading so much Victorian literature, I have also had to take the works that I'm hoping to read and break those down into figuring out how many chapters or pages do I need to read in those books in order to complete them on time. Next, I'm very excited to be tackling Halloweird, edited by Johnny Maines, and this is from the British Library. Caro and Sabine's on Instagram offered to do a read-along through Instagram. We're all part of a group, and we will read this together. They've set up a schedule where you just read one of the selections each day. To be honest, I don't know that much about the selections in here. I did see Edith Wharton was on the list, but I was completely taken in by this beautiful cover. It's got this holographic design on it. The back is even stunning. It's just lovely. They are not easy to come by. When I ordered it, it was a pre-order and it took a really long time to get here. So if you are interested in joining that group, feel free to leave a comment below. I can connect you guys up, and just be sure to know that it might take a little bit for you to get the book and you might have to play catch up a little bit, but it seems like much of my October experience is going to just be chipping away at multiple options each day, and Halloweird is going to be a part of that. Next, we get into my more modern fiction options. I love a big tea mug that has a lid to keep it warm. Okay, so I have Miss Hargreaves by Frank Baker. This, I think, is like a Frankenstein retelling. So we have Norman Huntley and his friend Henry, and they, for whatever reason, I guess we'll find out, invented an 83-year-old woman named Miss Hargreaves. And through the storytelling of it, they had created all these like really quirky and obscure characteristics of Miss Hargreaves, and come to find out, they discover that she comes to fruition. She exists. I think we get into some of the same concepts that Mary Shelley did with Frankenstein and the creation of Frankenstein's creature, of moral obligation and trying to explain it to your family and your connections. So we'll see. I heard about this from Simon. He was at Nora, who is at Pear Jelly. He mentioned this book over a year ago. And so I've been tracking this. I found a used copy on Thrift Books and have been saving it to read in October as kind of like a Frankenstein-inspired adjacent tale. All right, I have a couple middle grade books to share with you. So the first one is the Susan Cooper Dark is Rising series. The Grey King is the fourth book in her Arthurian saga tale. I have been making my way through this series and really loving it. The Grey King actually won the Newbery Medal for the year that it was published. I always found it intriguing that the fourth book in a series won the award. The same thing happened to Lloyd Alexander's series as well. It also got a Newbery Medal, even though it was almost, I think, the last book in that series. So originally I thought each of these could act as a standalone. I, after reading them, think that's not true. I really think you need to start at the beginning of the series, and I would recommend reading this series. It's really great. So in this, we go back to Will Stanton being the main character. The second book in the series, The Dark is Rising, is actually set at St. Stephen's Day, so it's around Christmas. This is set around All Souls Day, which is November 1st. So it starts with a poem. On the day of the dead, when the year too dies, must the youngest open the oldest hills, through the door of the birds where the breeze breaks. There fire shall fly from the raven boy, and the silver eyes that see the wind, and the light shall have the harp of gold. There is also Welsh language in here. So again, with that Arthurian saga bent, there is a lot of Welsh folklore influence in her books, and I am excited to continue in this series. Next, I've got an Ava Ibbotson. This is so cute. It's called The Great Ghost Rescue. This is a story about the ghosts of Britain needing a new home. So we have Humphrey the Horrible. He and his family are just getting pushed out of these places to haunt. You know, you have old train stations that are being renewed because they need to run the trains. You've got old haunted houses that are being bought and fixed up. And so these ghosts are like, we don't have anywhere to inhabit, to haunt, that is, kind of away from the prying eyes of humans. And so they befriend a little boy named Ricky who joins them in their quest to try to find a place for their ghost family. My understanding is this is full of adventure. It's obviously a quest to seek home. There's obviously found family connections in this, and I think there's a villain as well. I found The Pumpkin Princess and the Forever Knight by Stephen Banbury at a Books A Million earlier this summer, and I was like, this book is so pretty, not just on the cover, but also in the inside. And it also, as I read about the plot, reminds me so much of Long Live the Pumpkin Queen with Jack Skellington and Sally, as well as the new book, The Hour of the Pumpkin Queen. In this, we have a little girl who is an orphan, and she gets adopted by a pumpkin queen. She gets sent to Hallowell Valley, which is like a Halloween town, and it is full of all sorts of these Halloween creatures. I think this is cozy and heartwarming. I do think that she has to do a little bit of fighting to be able to keep her found family status and keep them close to her. But I'm really looking for just, again, cozy and also very atmospheric. So I think that's it for the middle grade. I did want to mention, and I have mentioned this now in a couple different videos, but I am going to read Strange Practice by Vivian Shaw. I never do this, but I was in a Barnes & Noble, and someone who used to work there had come in and was just perusing, and I had mentioned my desire for like cozy fantasy. I just love, that genre. And she recommended this Strange Practice, and based on a stranger's recommendation, I bought this book. We have Dr. Greta Helsing. She is the descendant of the Dracula Helsing fame family, except instead of hunting vampires, she is actually a doctor to the undead creatures in her town. My understanding is that this is sort of like an urban fantasy. It is modern, in modern times, but the language really does make you feel like you are in a bygone era. And so I really do like the idea of the juxtaposition of an urban fantasy with a more Victorian era feel. This October is the month for me to tackle this, and I am hoping that in and amongst everything else that I want to read, that I will be able to get to this as well. I know I mentioned reading Jezebel on my Kindle, but I am also planning on continuing through all of the anticipated releases that I was given on NetGalley to be able to read and review in advance. To no one's surprise, I'm behind on that. Never Ever After by Sue Lynn Tan comes out at the end of October, and so I would like to read that before its release date. I am going to read Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. So I think that's it for October. I have found myself more this fall doing a little bit more mood reading. So there's a potential that Victober bleeds into November and that I choose some other books that I have collected this autumn. So we will see. I would love to hear what you are planning to read, what you're most excited about for Victober. If you're not choosing to do Victober, let me know what other books you are choosing to read this month. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.